Hello everyone. I'm going to use this moment to walk you through how to conduct a group facilitation and take you through the process so you have an example of how it's done and what you can use for your final presentation. You would have done some preparation, asking the individuals what they just like- as we discussed in class, getting an idea of what some of the requirements are for the facilitation, what some of the concerns are. You would have used one of the assessment methods and taking yourself through that entire process just to make sure that you have some background on the issue. For this particular facilitation, what we're going to focus on is the decision on whether or not to have synchronous or asynchronous classes. Synchronous classes being where everyone is online, the faculty member and the students are online at the same time going through a live lesson, versus asynchronous where it's recorded, very much like what I'm doing now, and students are able to look at the recording on their time when they have the time to do it, and then respond accordingly or not. So this is what this facilitation will be for this particular department, whether or not they should have synchronous or asynchronous recordings. So hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for this group facilitation session. I really do appreciate all of the information everyone shared with me. Um, if you recall, I sent out some information asking you about what are some of your capabilities at home, what are some of the concerns you have about synchronous and asynchronous learning, what are even some of the knowledge you have about asynchronous and synchronous learning, and what are some of the resources that you would need to help facilitate this. So thank you very much for everyone who submitted their feedback, who submitted their responses, and those responses will help guide a lot of the conversation that we are going to have today. What I would like you to do at this point in time is to understand my role. My role is as a facilitator. My job is just to facilitate this particular interaction and conversation. I have no direct stake in the outcome of the conversation. I am not functioning here as a faculty member. I am an outside consultant that was brought in to help facilitate this conversation. What I would like everyone to do at this point in time is to possibly introduce yourselves, what class you're teaching, and how long have you been teaching at this particular institution. So if you can just have everyone go around and introduce themselves. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for introducing yourselves, and once again, welcome. Before we start, I want us to engage in a conversation around what are some of the norms that we would like to have for this facilitation session. What are some of the ground rules we would like to have for this facilitation session? So if you would, and I have some that I start off with. One of the things that I ask us is that we respect the idea of one mic, which basically means that only one person speaks at a time, and if somebody is speaking, then we try our best not to interrupt them. Um, what we also ask is that we respect the time that has been set. You will notice that at various segments, I give you a certain amount of time to speak. And what I ask is that we recognize and respect that time limit just for the sake of allowing the process to move smoothly. At various points in time, we will have an opportunity to engage in back and forth and to ask questions about what was said, what came up, to ask clarifying questions. And what I ask is that when we're asking clarifying questions, that we ask them as such, right, as really clarifying questions, and not as I got here, or hey, you know what, uh, engage in name calling and things like that, that really make the process devolve into very disconstructive and non-productive conversations. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add to this list? Duration of our facilitation, and even when we come back in the future, I'm going to leave this list posted, and at times, if necessary, I'll refer us to the list. If at any point in time during this facilitation process you think that something else should be added to the list, we can take a pause and have a conversation around adding that to the list, and we can see what's going on from there. Now, based on these items that we have listed here, are there any items that anyone would have anyone would like to ask any questions about, or anyone has any objections to. All right, seems like we're all in agreement about these contractual guidelines for this facilitation process. So the startup question that I'm going to ask in terms of as we go around this room, and for the most part, we are going to do it in a round robin format. If at any point in time when we get to that portion of it where I ask if anyone wants to ask a clarifying question or a direct question of somebody else in the conversation, by all means, we won't necessarily be going in a round robin fashion at that point in time, but you will have the chance to ask somebody directly that clarifying question or share an insight that you may have gotten. So the way I want to start this off is identify the key decision or decisions that we need to make today. The decision that I have is whether or not, based on the conversation that we've had, whether or not whether or not this department should move to synchronous or asynchronous learning for the online portion of the classes being offered. Are there any other decisions that we would like to make? Oh, thank you for that question. So if I'm understanding what you're asking correctly, what you're saying is, are the only two options online or synchronous? Is there an option, sorry, not online or synchronous, but synchronous or asynchronous? And is there an option for hybrid? Based on the conversations that have been had thus far, it seems like it has come down to synchronous or asynchronous, just because of the fact that we don't have any facilities to have a hybrid class. And hybrid is understood to be in person versus online. Were you thinking of hybrid in a different way? Oh, okay. Thank you for that clarification. So what you're saying is that hybrid for you is synchronous versus asynchronous and not necessarily meeting in person. All right. So I think that's a decision that we can put on the table for today as well. So right now the decisions we are making is, should we have synchronous or asynchronous lessons for the students, or synchronous versus asynchronous teaching, and or is there a place for a hybrid um, option when we're doing the online teaching? All right. In terms of this, before we even get started with facilitating the conversation, what decision process would we like to use? Um, I'll go over quickly the various decision making processes that we have. We have the unanimous decision making process, and unanimous decision making process when everyone agrees on that this is the process that they're going to adopt. And agreement doesn't necessarily mean that you have no objections to it, right? Agreement basically means that you're not going to stand in the way of the decision moving forward. So you may have an agreement with some reservations. You may have a very forthright no contestation agreement, or you may have an agreement with some objections, but you're still willing to go along with it, even though it's not your first choice. So that's what unanimous or unanimity means, or consensus decision making. When it comes to majority, we know majority in this case is a simple majority. One more than half means that the decision carries, and we are not going to necessarily use the consultation and leader makes a decision approach, because that's not what was the charge here for today. The options are really majority or unanimity or consensus. So what are we feeling most comfortable with today? And for this one, I would like to go around the room and just ask everyone, what decision making process are they comfortable with? Right? So based on what I've heard, it sounds like because this is something that would affect all faculty members and all students, consensus is the choice that has been made for the decision making process today. All right, so that is when we come to actually making a decision, that is the decision that is the process that we are going to use based on the consensus of this group presently. So in terms of building an understanding of this, I just want us to have a clear idea as to what synchronous versus asynchronous is. Synchronous is when everyone is online at the same time, the teacher as well as the students. Asynchronous is when it gets recorded, posted, and then the students can look at it on their own schedule. Some of the concerns that have been raised, that have been discussed previously from the survey or from the assessment gathering piece, centers on access to technology, whether students have the capabilities to be online at the same time, whether faculty members have the ability to be online and to host the class. Does the technology system work to host that many students for large classes? Because some of you have classes that are over 100 individuals. Can the system handle that that number of students online? And another concern that came up is, what if in the moment the system goes down? How can we rectify that? Based on just giving you some context, at the university here, there are a number of different systems that are in place. Some individuals do, in fact, some programs have only asynchronous, some programs have synchronous only, and some programs do a blend of synchronous and asynchronous sessions. So to put that out there, all of these systems are in existence at the university with various levels of success and challenges, and we can share some of the resources in terms of how individuals have used those systems in the past. This has become necessary because we have had to close down the university due to the coronavirus. So therefore, we don't have a physical place to meet, and we just need to make this decision soon. Just so that we are clear, there is a time limit on this decision-making process, meaning that we are resuming classes within the next 7 days, and we need to make this decision within the next 48 hours, I would say. Within the next 48 hours is what I've been charged with, because this is something that is absolutely needed to, depending on the decision, we have different mechanisms we need to put in place to make sure that the students have a good experience. Questions before we move forward? All right. Does anyone have any points of view that they would like to share at this point in time? So, and that's what I want to do. I want to give everyone an opportunity to share any background information that we may not have covered, any experience that you may have had with it. So, for this question, what experience have you had using either the asynchronous, asynchronous, or a hybrid option for teaching? This one I'll use a round robin. I would ask everyone to take about 60 seconds just to share what experience you've had using either of those two systems. As we can see, there's a lot of experience in the room, and it varies across the spectrum. Some have had, a couple of you have had experience using both systems. Some of you have had no experience in an online space before. And from what I'm hearing, there is, you've shared some of the pros and cons of your experience using either system. And I want you to keep some of these in mind, because when we go through some of the decisions or some of the options for the decision, I would like to share some of these as we go along. One time I would like to go a bit deeper with this conversation. And the other question I have for you is, what are some of the challenges that you have had using the systems, using either synchronous or asynchronous or even the hybrid model? What are some of the challenges that you've had in using these various models? At this point in time, I would like to open it up. You may have heard something that you want some more information on, or you may have heard something that that you also want to comment on. So I would like to open it up to, if you've heard something that you want to comment on or ask a question on, please, you have a moment to do that now. What I would ask you to do is to make your question a question, if you're asking a question, and if this is an experience that you've shared, or something that you had made you remember something else that resonated with you, then I by all means I ask you to share that as well. I would like to give everyone about 60 seconds to ask their question, or to share their something that resonated with them, or to or to connect with something else that they may have heard. So if you would take a couple minutes just to go around and do that, is there anyone who would like to share? And for right now, before you start sharing, I just want to see a show of hands by all those who have a question that they would like to ask. All right, 5 of you would like to ask questions. All right, cool. Marcy, would you mind going first? All right, so at this point in time, thank you very much everyone for sharing that. I would like to look at the at all of the different options that we have for the various decisions or actions. Based on the conversation that has been happening, the list that I have in front of me, when it comes to synchronous, the question is, do we when it comes to synchronous learning, the question is, do we have the classes at the same time that students have it on the system on their current roster, or is there a space to change the times that we meet? When it comes to asynchronous, the question center around what technology are we using to record and upload, as well as what is the level of privacy that we have, how much is this getting shared, what is some of the intellectual privacy concern, intellectual property concerns that we have around that. So these are just some of the concerns that have come under these various options. Did I miss anything? Or is there anything else that somebody would like to add? What else would you like to add to the list here? Okay, so one question is, if we have a synchronous option, is it possible to get a TA to help us with the chat? Okay. All right. What I'm also hearing is that if we are doing the asynchronous, at what opportunity would students have to make to interact with the professor? Is it only via email, or is there an option for a set time to meet online when it's like an online office hour? Okay. So I took some time to put this together in terms of what the options are based on some of the other things that just came up. And what it sounds like is that synchronous, can we have synchronous? If we're having synchronous, can we have a TA? And it seems like everyone would appreciate that as an option. If we have asynchronous, can we also have faculty members do office hours? And if these office hours go beyond what is the contracted time for, how much time a faculty member spends in their office, is there an option for additional compensation with this? And what I'm also hearing is that if we are doing synchronous, can faculty members get get assistance with the technology that they may need if there's a need for technology? All right. So I want us to look at these options that we have here, and let's see where we are. So right now let's look at the option of the synchronous learning option. So if what I'm hearing you say is that if there is a student who can facilitate the synchronous, facilitate the chat and help during the synchronous session, that is something that a number of you are amenable to. Is there anything that is untenable on this list? Okay, so let's pause here and look at some of the criteria we would use to maybe eliminate some of these options. All right, so based on what has been shared, it sounds like the main criteria is department finances, if there are finances to support additional resources, whether it be human resources or technology resources. And secondly, what is the level of technology that's available for students? It sounds like those are the criteria that we're using. So let's look at the first criteria. In terms of synchronous versus asynchronous, in terms of synchronous with TA support, are we speaking about new TAs, or are we speaking about office about staff members to assist. All right, so based on what has been said, there is there is no there are no financial resources to invest in TAs from as one of the criteria, as one of the boundaries that has been set prior to this. There's no financial resources to invest in TAs. A question did come up in terms of can student workers who are already on the payroll be given extra hours to facilitate this, or can the department loan some of these hours to teachers, to faculty members, for the student workers to do work in having to facilitate class? What it sounds like is that there is space or flexibility in it for student workers to support some faculty members who identify as needing that support in their classes. All right. What I'm also hearing with the asynchronous is that what I'm hearing with asynchronous is that a number of you, based on the major, you prefer the interaction with the students. So it seems like for a number of you, asynchronous just doesn't feel like it fits with this particular major. Okay. Right. It also sounds like there are some records that you would like to do, but you don't think that it should be the primary means of instruction for the class. All right. So where we are sitting right now, it sounds as though that there's a heavy leaning towards synchronous with some departmental support for those who want it, and there is a idea of supplemental asynchronous recordings that are not the primary means of instruction, but supplement other items in the class. All right. Okay. So I'm going to take a moment here and just finalize this. Make sure we have it as make sure what I write is what the general consensus is, and then see where we are. All right. So based on what I understand, where the group is sitting presently is that there's a leaning towards synchronous. Right. I don't want to call it a decision just yet. There's a leaning towards synchronous with departmental support for those who want it, and those who want the option to record but not have it as their primary and only means of interaction with the students would like the opportunity to be able to record and post it up there for students to access, but would like it to be that students do have to also look at that content as well. So what I would like to do is do an anonymous check-in with respect to where we sit. So in front of each of you, there's a piece of paper with yes, no on it. What I would like you to do is to circle yes or no, depending on based on your reaction to what I just said as the proposal that we have before us. That the decision for this particular department is that synchronous is a preference, with the option for for student worker support if needed, and that asynchronous learning will not be a primary thing, but it's chosen as an option for faculty members who want to add additional support, with the requirement that students also listen to the asynchronous recordings as well. So please just circle yes or no if what I've summarized there is where you stand, and then we'll see where we sit. If you do this, if this is not where you stand, I would like you to just make a quick note as to what your objection is, and we can keep it anonymous. And if at a certain point in time you decide to identify, by all means feel free to do so. But for right now, let's go ahead and do it anonymously. All right, thank you very much. So it sounds like that we have closer consensus on, yes, that this is where we want to go. There's What I'm also getting is that there's a sense from some of the feedback that I've received that a main concern is students having access to the technology. As long as students have access to the technology, um, to be online at the same time, then then we'll have consensus. So the question then sits with, we are willing to move forward with this as long as there is some indication that students can contact the dean's office for support with accessing technology, whether it be internet connection or hardware. All right. So what we'll do next is, it sounds like we have an agreement if that is addressed. So at this point in time, what I would say would be the next step would be to verify this is available with the dean's office, to find out what the process is, and then we share that response with the faculty, with the entire faculty. um, I'll ask again just to have everyone identify whether or not that's a route that they want to take, and then and from there we'll decide if we need to have another facilitation process in the event that students don't have access to technology. Does that sound like the next steps where we want to go, where you want to go with this? Awesome. So at this point in time, I want to pause and ask you how you felt about the process. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate you moving through this group decision making process, and look out for that email from your department, and we will and if we need to have another group facilitation, and if the department chooses me to facilitate that dialogue, I will see you again. If not, I wish you all the best moving forward. Take care.